Brilliant, Ossie. Thanks for joining again. Joining today. What I'm trying to do as part of Panoramic's Development Generation Series is, have these interactions because, I don't know about you, it felt a bit isolated last year, not from your current employer, but from other professionals in the sector. So what better is to share ideas on LinkedIn or the relevant social media platforms, to share best practice and make sure everyone's thriving. So I think it'd be great to kind of start with, your kind of background. I can see that you come from an economic and political science background. Me, I did marine engineering in university, and I'm doing recruitment. So it's weird and wonderful how people get into the industries. But just tell me a bit about your background.
Okay, I've been in local government very, very long time in different forms. I mean, originally, I went to LSE, did politics. I was a political activist more than anything else, really, and would have gone to work for the GLC, but Mrs. Thatcher had abolished it. So I ended up starting off as a graduate trainee at Wandsworth, donkeys years ago. So that's and then I've had a variety of local government jobs. So I started very much in the sort of policy area and drifted into urban regeneration as it became a subject. I've got absolutely no professional or specialist qualifications at all. I'm not a planner, I'm not a transport planner. I've self-taught, autodidact in all those sort of areas. But it's sort of interesting in terms of the way that regeneration has developed as a local government role. I suppose when I started, you still had just about borough architects and borough planners, and first job I think I ever had was sorting through the files for the Alton Estate, which is a famous piece of architecture which has been transferred obviously from the GLC at its abolition to Wandsworth. So and I just got into that sort of area by chance, and then worked in central policy units. Did actually a lot of apposite now, of course, that I did a lot of work bidding for European funding. That's actually my main route into urban development regeneration, was through being the person who wrote the bids for European Social Fund and European EDRF money back in the day, and then getting sort of drawn into, if you've won the money, well, someone's got to deliver the project, and being left as the person delivering the project. Because I probably encapsulate the history of urban regeneration in local English local government over the last 25, 30 years, really, because you go through the full cycle of running a big regen department to then running a sort of arm's length development company, which is the new sort of fashion at the moment. I'm sure
that's a good question. The new trend, isn't it? There's
so that's
a lot of pros and cons of the sector. And do you feel, as you said, back in the day, you go into it not in industry and you'd work your way through. As time gone on, do you personally still see that as a route that anyone get into, or is it kind of qualification based now that you have to do these protocols to get into the sector?
I think it's interesting, isn't it? I think a lot of people are still in this area who are generalists, and I think we ought to be doing more to encourage generalists, actually, rather than professionals. There is a bit, and I think it's one of the things around equality, actually, that local government, in an attempt to make things fair, became very, very, and it was an attempt, and actually it's a failed attempt in many ways, basing everything on qualifications and courses passed and time served, which does give you a type of fairness, because obviously, you've got fixed criteria for appointing, but then you're ignoring loads of other people who possibly haven't had the chance to go down a particular educational route or haven't taken a particular educational route. And, I'm a big believer that, recruiting people, and particularly in something like urban regeneration, you need people who've got the surveying qualification or whatever. You need some people who've got the planning qualification. So the cat meowing at me. You need the people to have those qualifications, but it's much more about aptitude and attitude, and an affinity. And I think all too often, the public realm in the UK, I think, is very poor, because we let transport engineers design everything. Where actually it should be more people who are involved in dealing with people and making what's a livable place, and what places feel like, and can you engage with people. So I think as much as technical skills, we need people with small p and big P political skills, engagement skills, emotional intelligence. So I think I think we're starting to possibly reverse that trend, but where everybody has to be from a professional background, and the professions are everything, and hopefully we're coming out of that a bit.
I agree, and because some people, you have one path in your mind what you want to do when you're growing up, etc. Then obviously something comes along, and you want to go down different trajectories. So now I totally agree. And obviously you said you've been in the local authority sector for quite some time. Development companies are, over the last how many years, are growing their portfolio to match the smaller HAs. So what kind of drew you to be first and to be the director?
Yeah. Well, I've done 10 years in Ealing where we've made really significant change in an area of high value, limited opportunity in terms of the borough owning land. And the great thing with Barking Dagenham is that the borough's got a lot of land for London, though not for the rest of the country or the world. Land values are relatively low, so the local authority can buy land feasibly and develop it. And lots of opportunity, and a borough with real ambition. Political leadership are prepared to take risks and put a lot of money behind a development program, and the chance to actually, most of the local authorities have worked with you. You interface with the development community through the planning process. You attempt to engineer change through the planning process largely. This just gave the opportunity to do it by direct build and actually doing this, doing a lot of stuff itself. So to be involved directly in the construction process and taking schemes right the way through from concept to delivery is really, really exciting. That's what appealed to me.
Yes, yeah, you've got the journey, haven't you?
And we're of a, it's also the other interesting thing was we're not just one of these, you've got these, 6 bricks or whatever and things like that, and who are housing companies who just develop small amounts of housing and they're managing it or not. We also have planning, transport, some of those other regeneration functions and regulatory functions. I wouldn't have done this job if we were just a housing company. It's the fact that we have the planning function and other. So really, we're the regeneration department, but we've got a direct delivery arm. That's what makes it so interesting.
As you said, you've got the diverse portfolios, haven't you? You've got different agendas, different stakeholders. So I guess every day's not the same, which is great. It keeps you on your toes. I think for me personally, when I'm speaking to professionals and me from when I'm working in these types of environments, I'm really fascinated to kind of understand moving forward if these development companies like the BFirsts and those out there, what is the kind of long-term goal? Is it to stay a separate entity, obviously council owned, but a separate entity and rival maybe smaller HAs or smaller developers, for example, or is the long-term goal, will it be coming back into the council? What's your kind of
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because to a large extent, we are very much part of the council. We're organisationally slightly different, but we work integrally with the council. So in all but name, we're part of the council. Actually, we have certain operational freedoms from not being formally local authority. We have a few downsides of it in terms of not being part of the local pension scheme and things like that. But takes the rough with the smooth.
Yeah.
So for us, it just works because it works financially and it works in governance terms, and we could stay like this for effectively forever working within the borough. We're not out to rival or compete with housing associations. We want housing associations to come into the borough and develop in the borough.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
We want small developers too. We want big developers. In an ideal world, we want bigger developers in the borough. We see our role as being catalytic to a degree because we're an area where the market's failed. House builders model doesn't work in Barking Dagenham traditionally. Major developers and investors haven't moved in for all sorts of reasons linked to market value, perception, location, things like that. So we're there to change that. And we've got a long time to, ultimately, if you get to the point where you don't need us, then you basically stop doing it and you just shrink it back into carrying out the planning function and doing other regulatory type roles at a much smaller scale, but that is a long time off. So I can see, and it would really be where what the rules are around accountancy and treatment of capital and revenue expenditure and things like that. We could be more integrated into the council. We could be further away. We're very operational on a day-to-day basis, very, very closely integrated. And I think it'll probably stay like that. There's no, at a very extreme position, you could sell us possibly as a company sale at some point. I wouldn't, be difficult to do, but that sort of thing that you could do, sell the IP and the sort of personnel expertise and things like that. It's not something that we're contemplating, or I say it would be practically quite difficult. Or you could just wind up and make us into a council department, which again would be relatively straightforward, actually. So, a lot of people get overexcited about, development companies and people think they've got to have one, they've got to have one. If you know why you want one, then they're useful. If you don't know why you want one, you don't need one. And it's not, so for us, it works because of the way we're structured, the nature of our borough. Other places, it wouldn't necessarily work. I say we're light years away from most of the local authority housing companies, both in terms of scale, but also function and role.
I think, as you said, BFirst are the leading. You've gone from just not from housing, but the other areas, the transport, generation, urban which is great. And you know what quite like you said then is that you've got a different offering, haven't you? You could quite happily be a separate entity, obviously council alone, but just grow and expand, and obviously you create a better offering for the HAs, the developers, etc. moving forward, which it is great. And what's your kind of, you know, I know thinking ahead or hypothetically speaking, what's your kind of vision for the next 5 years to, you know, improve on
I think what we carry, you know, we've got a massive pipeline anyway. We're building 5,000 homes over the next 5 or 6 years. So, you know, we're adding on to that. And then we've got another wave of estate regen schemes you'd want to move on to further commercial development that we're doing. So, you know, I think it will be more of the same on a similar trajectory, probably more stuff around employment.
Okay, nice, yeah.
Handing out that sort of economic offer, you know, big infrastructure projects, 10, 15 years worth of, you know, potentially a big infrastructure projects around the A13 and the, you know, the Dagenham dock area and potential for rail freight development there. So, you know, it's more of, you know, the thing with Barking Dagenham, it's got enormous opportunity because the amount of land and the space and the connectivity, you know, and you know, so, you know, I could see us doing more of this, you know, at increasing pace for the next 5, 10, 15 years potentially, you know.
And you obviously touched upon the employment side of things. Has that been the goal throughout, or has that been excelled now, obviously, because of Brexit, COVID, etc.? Has that enhanced your why you want to promote that more for Be First?
No, I mean, I think we've always wanted to do it, and it's a very important, because, you know, we're very much about the regeneration of the place, which is about, yeah, development of housing, but it's also, you know, we're a borough with a huge amount of industrial land, strategic industrial land. We're really important for London's wider economy. You know, and we want to create places where, you know, people locally can work, don't have to commute, you know, create jobs, generate wealth rather than just providing housing. You know, and our Barking Dagenham model is all about inclusive growth, which is about bringing up the existing community and giving them opportunities rather than just bringing in a new community. So it's, you know, it's and economic development and development of employment space and good quality employment space is really important. So, you know, and we'll do more of that. You know, COVID, Brexit, things like that, you know, putting more stress on the economy. So it's even more important we do that and counteract the, you know, essentially self-inflicted and disaster of Brexit and the naturally inflicted disaster of COVID. You know, we can do more to counteract, and we will. I mean, and in some ways, those market conditions actually help us, because you're seeing, you know, value for industrial land, and people actually want to, you know, develop industrial. You know, we're doing some industrial development, which, you know, we started off thinking, well, this, we're going to have to cross-subsidise this from some of the residential. Actually, it's the other way around, you know, because the commercial industrial values are really strong because people want to be in this part of East London.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing it's obviously, I think people forgot about Brexit, because obviously COVID has taken main stage, but it has thrown through curveballs for, you know, when I speak to people, well, now, as you said, and people like yourself. But it's great, innovative thinking, coming with new solutions, because working in the public sector, there always are challenges, doesn't it? But it's the way you overcome it and grow. You know, you can't just sit around waiting things happen, because you're going to fall behind with your pipelines, programs.
Yeah, you have to keep moving, and you know, it creates practical problems in terms of, you know, labour force is clearly going to be a problem over the coming 6 to 12 months. You know, materials for construction are a problem already, so it's driven inflationary impacts there, and supply shortages of things like plasterboard and all those sort of things. So, you know, it's a problem we have to cope with, and, you know, local authorities are very resistant creatures, so they've had to deal with largely hostile governments most of the last 50 or 60 years, you know. So, you know, and local government has proved itself very, very resilient and able to innovate and change and respond to, you know, changing circumstances, actually far better than central government has in many ways.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the public sector, you know, what I quite like is the, you know, it's a bit cheesy, but you're leaving a legacy, aren't you, for you know, the physical place and also the residents, etc. moving forward. So you must take great pride operating in a space that you're instrumental in doing this. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing in this world is that, you know, in this particular job, that change is so, you know, it takes time to come, that often you don't, you won't be there to see the change. There's the old adage about planting a tree that you won't live to sit under, you know, and that's very much what this is about. Actually, you're doing stuff that you won't see the benefit of, but it's for, you know,
you still know you're making a difference, though. So I guess that's
so you
what makes
just
it
have to
worthwhile.
go on that basis, you know, that you might not see it, but yeah.
And also, I think moving on to, you know, to get to where you are, you've had to obviously recruit and bring on the right types of skill sets, haven't you? You know, you can't, you have to make calculated decisions, make sure that you are you know, enhancing the pipeline. Of course, that's probably an area where also I go away a bit more, but obviously for yourself then, what is, when's recruiting, what's your kind of process to identify the correct skill sets from either, a skill set, experience background or the softer skills?
Yeah, it's something we're doing a lot of work on at the moment. Because when we first started up, because we were quite small, we had core of workforce who were directly TUPE transferred from the council. We've then added to over time. We've now got to a level of organisational maturity where we're taking the view, we really need to look at our recruitment procedures, how we recruit and develop staff. I mean, when in industry, we're only about pitiful levels of people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds are employed, 4% national, something like that. We're in a place where 60% of the population are from Black and ethnic minority background. Our workforce has got to more accurately reflect our local populace, one in terms of giving them opportunity, but also in terms of understanding and working for that community. So the big drive, I think, for us now is thinking, how can we make our recruitment processes better, more open, more inclusive, so that on a crude survey, we're pretty good in terms of, very good for the industry in terms of both gender mix and ethnicity mix, but it's not good enough by any stretch of imagination. So the big driver for us is how do we get more inclusive recruitment processes, which again, and it's back to that earlier discussion, you're reaching out to people who may not have the ready baked in, 10 years experience working for so-and-so and these qualifications, but you're looking for how can you change your process? And one of the challenges, I think, it's all too often people go, well, they work for so-and-so, they're really good, whether that's Arab or whatever, or Barking or whoever, therefore we'll employ them. Of course, if you haven't had a chance to work for those people, you're at a disadvantage through that process, but you might actually be better or more skilled. Somebody hasn't had 15 years experience. My view often is, you can have 15 years experience, but it's possibly the first 1 year is where you're really learning. The rest of it, you're just doing the same thing.
Just going to the bases.
And again, with the sort of, I think it's many of the sort of recruitment consultants, you need to challenge them in terms of, do they just go to the same pool of people? It's a bit like, you look at football managers, they just recycle, one gets sacked and they go to the next team and they get sacked again and they come out and you think, well, that's partly why, that's a really undiverse sector. You got no women, you got no people from ethnic minorities managing top football clubs, and it's just a recycling of the existing generally old white men, and so, that's, and I think a lot of recruitment consultants do that because they've got lists of people on their books. So it's, can you recruitment consultants more creatively discuss, how do you recruit in this sector where, that there are very few people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds in the sector. So, one of the big challenges for us is going to be how do we grow and develop our own people who are already in the organisation. For example, do we offer some scholarships to people? Do we pay for people to go to architecture school from local secondary schools? It's certainly something we're looking at. We've got apprenticeship programs, things like that. How do you move people up from apprenticeship programs into senior positions? We've got an all-white senior management team, which is not really acceptable. I don't think we have to change that. It's how do you change that?
Okay.
When the industry is so imbalanced. So there are lots of really big challenges for us, whilst at the same time making sure you've got the skills and expertise to deliver the core business role. There's necessarily conflict there, because I think if you get more people who are from the local community, better able to understand it and serve it. But and at the same time, I think younger unexperienced people often bring much better ideas than older time served people who are set in doing things a particular way. So there's lots of opportunities, but it's I think those are the big challenges in terms of growing a workforce now. If you just want saying, there are plenty of people out there as a result of COVID actually to just tick a box and get someone who can do a job competently. But you've got to think about the future and developing the organisation.
Well, it's specifications, and the idea obviously it's probably counteract what I do, of course, as on my day job. But absolutely, if it's coming out yourself, if you've got the platform, you've got that foundation to bring people from starting out the career all the way through. What better way to do that for continuity? Obviously it'll save on finances.
You've got to keep opening you've got to keep the door open there, because that's the other issue in terms of how do if you take on 6 graduates, you can't keep 6 graduates in the organisation because the organisation is not going to endlessly grow. So therefore you have to have roots. And I think it's a lot the recruitment consultancy sector can do in terms of changing its model to, which wouldn't put it out of business, but would actually give it new business opportunities in terms of working with people around, development and moving, people, we might train 6 graduates, we obviously can't give, every year 6 graduates permanent job because we get so big that we, but there might be somebody we can work with and say, well, actually, so and so might have a need for someone who's been through our graduate program. So that's a role for somebody to help outsource those people to somewhere else and develop their career in a different organisation. So I think there's opportunities there for people who want to embrace it rather than just, as with every area, just work in the old way.
Yeah, and the public sector is great for that, isn't it? As you said, if you had 6 graduates, they're not all going to stay, but if they, maybe 2, 3 come along, and then you've got 2, 3 who are, really good at the job, but it's just not the right role or different skills or the environment.
Or just you can't keep everybody. It's like you take the apprenticeship program, you can't keep everybody forever because the organisation will just grow incrementally, and you can't. Our business isn't going to grow at that rate, Not going to
that's why I like the public sector because it's not that kind of in the private world. You both scrap the right talent because it's your own money. Where public sector is publicly owned money, so you can have a different approach. And also me personally, when I'm recruiting to the sector, people come across private, but I think people do forget that the soft skills where they can't just come in and get stuff done straight away. Sometimes you have to go through hurdles. Sometimes headstands, somersaults to get stuff done, but there is a process you need to go through. And I think it's making people aware of that. It is fascinating. And as you said, where every company has, even though you're doing similar things, different trajectories, different size, etc. There is different skill sets you need. So obviously, different people can act better. And I think for me, so before obviously we sat down and did this. I had a couple of questions when speaking to people, of course, on my own. And one thing that's coming up a lot is kind of carbonisation of the housing stock to make houses more modern. I know there's blocks across the country doing it more than others because obviously we're trying to get the old-fashioned way, and where if you can have quality, insulated house, safe premises. Obviously, it costs more to start with, but the long-term goals financially and also from a health and environment perspective are great. So. Can you talk to me through how Be First are?
It's obviously our whole mission really is that we want to build housing designed to the highest possible quality standards at an affordable price, and that's what we do. And part of that quality is about cost to actually live in it, how it feels like to live in it, So you want to get to a position where it's as thermally sufficient as possible. You have we're really lucky in Barking Dagenham that we've got an energy company, so all our accommodation is driven off district heating systems, which are at the moment they're gas based, but that's a transitional technology, and we'll in time we're moving to looking at using methane from an adjacent sewage plant and things like that to power that system and increasingly decarbonising it. One of the reasons we've done a lot of work around modern methods of construction and off-site manufacture is that enables you to achieve higher standards of thermal efficiency, better material choice. It's lower carbon in terms of the development production process than conventional on-site building. One of the big challenges to us has been squaring this issue around fire safety. There's been a degree of panic around fire safety, which has led to restrictions on the use of timber, which is clearly highly sustainable. So we're probably using more concrete than we want to do because there's an awful lot of embedded carbon in concrete. It's a very, very environmentally unfriendly material, though clearly very, very fire resistant. So it's trying to juggle the two. It's also around cost and price. Going full BREEAM can be very expensive. Can you do something which isn't quite ticking all the boxes, but is actually as good in genuine environmental terms and cost in use terms? The big thing for us is making sure that everything is very easy to maintain and look after. So again, standardisation, which then leads you into that modern methods of construction. So we have standard kitchens, bathrooms, standard meter cupboards, standard outlets, all this sort of stuff. So you're reducing your construction cost, but also because everything's very, very tightly designed, you're also improving your sustainability and energy efficiency and all those sort of things. So that's big areas for us, but they're not mutually exclusive. I think if you're getting efficient design and you're getting better and easier construction, you're getting better and easier maintenance in the long term, and you're getting lower costs for the tenant to live in because they have to spend less on heating. And when you add in things like district heating systems, even a gas-fired district heating system, which isn't clearly entirely carbon neutral by any stretch of the imagination. It's a lot better than having 6,000 individual gas boilers, much more efficient. So you're doing that stuff at scale, and you're doing stuff at the local point in terms of, we're doing air source heat pumps, we're doing ground heat, as well. Difficult to a degree because the technology in its relatively infancy and is developing, but again, we're big enough and of scale to develop some of that ourselves. We're doing private wire development, private wire network as well, which enables us to capture more of the money, less of it leaking out into the hands of the big utility companies who are fairly rapacious. So there's a lot going on in that area, but it's all doable.
Seems like a juggling act, doesn't it? Because you do one more thing, it's going to be these and others, but it seems like, and obviously throughout the industry, that quality must not suffer from doing too much of one thing or the other, because that's got to be that's just got to be mandatory, isn't it, to have quality housing?
Quality is what you want to achieve. Therefore you've got to get more efficient on, and particularly for us, it's stopping the leakage out of the system. So that we manage contractors very hard. We are quite lucky that we've got effectively a fairly enclosed system. That most of a lot of the expenditure is retained within the council, so that's with some of that leakage, and we don't have to make a profit for. We make a surplus for our shareholder, but it's not the 20% that a private developer's making. So they spend more money on the quality of the product.
And I know there's been a lot the last year or so. There's been changes to building regulations. I know the planning process has been amended. Obviously, there was people on both sides of the fence. Has that been a big challenge for the schemes you've had? Looking to get through pipeline, obviously on site.
I mean, the practical issue is a material approval by around fire regulation, which is a big blockage with the building research establishment approving new materials and certifying existing material. But the other stuff, I mean, it's every government I've ever known has tinkered with the planning system. It just happens, and you just get on with it. To be honest,
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, don't let it
this lot will fiddle with it. They won't make it any better. They probably always make it a bit more complicated, but it's just like the weather. You have to put up with it.
Well, as I said, you're probably used to that. Obviously, during your time in public sector, right? There's always something that you need to overcome.
I mean, government tinkers with the planning system usually, attempt to simplify it, always makes it more complicated, and that's just the way it goes.
I think one of the questions I've been asking, obviously, tender prices and costings because of Brexit and obviously COVID, is that the same situation with the building changes? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's one of those things you're just having to absorb. There's a degree of pressure there and have to cope with it. Yeah.
Perfect. I know you're saying you're building on industrial land, obviously seeking out new opportunities. What's the main challenges that you face for land acquisitions?
I mean, it's always price, actually. I mean, and the interesting thing for us is obviously in London, there was a big concern, really until last year that housing was eating industrial land. Actually, now industrial values are so strong that, we're being outbid on sites which we might consider for residential by shed operators effectively, because the logistics industry is so strong that, the effect of both Brexit and COVID means that, people want more storage space. The growth of internet shopping is inflating the values for sheds, and obviously it's a relatively safe and straightforward market. You're not limited Section 106 obligations. You start getting your money back in rent very quickly from a relatively capital cost low build. So that's the challenge for us at the moment. Actually, it's a good opportunity on one level, but it's also a challenge around residential development. The other, I mean, the thing that is sitting there in the system as well, obviously, is quite sharp value deflation in terms of both sale price and rental values in central London. Will that creep out? At what point? Probably not particularly critical for us, as most of what we're doing is an affordable product. But in long term, it does remove some of your options around cross subsidy. If demand was to fall right away, I mean, hasn't got to that point at the moment. And obviously, some London boroughs are experiencing quite significant population loss as a result of Brexit. We're not, but in that part, that's driven by a very young population and a quite high birth rate, and low value again draws more people in. But significant problem, I think, for some London boroughs now with schools that aren't full and definite population loss. So that's there are lots of challenges there.
Perfect. But I think what would look, obviously, the viewers who look at this, as you touched upon earlier, is come from different backgrounds. The reason why you get into it. For you, what is the most what kind of gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you most like about your role at Be First?
I mean, I like the variety of it, to be honest. I like the fact that you are doing direct build, but you're also doing planning, you're interfacing with the local authorities. You've got that political dimension there, which is, there you've got the community interface as well around the schemes that we're doing. It's not like just working for a developer or a planning consultant where you're just in your little box and you just produce your scheme. The opportunity to be involved in some really big strategic stuff like the A13 tunnel and the rail development and things like that. So it's just really varied. We've got lots of different angles and roles. I mean, I wouldn't work for a conventional housing company where you didn't do planning and all some of that other broader generation place stuff. But it's nice to have that opportunity where you're doing direct build. So actually, we're building quite a big architect practice within our operation, because we've got to take more control of design. So we've now got a design team, six or so people which we're recruiting into, and that's an area which you don't get if you're just working in a conventional local authority where you're just dealing with things largely through the planning process.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I didn't know you had such a diverse portfolio. So it is, yes, it seems quite exciting, and obviously every day is different, which is good. To get where you are, to get with Be First, the business, I'm sure you face some bumps and roads on the way. If you could give any advice to maybe senior leaders looking to set up their own companies, obviously I know they have different objectives. What advice would you give them?
I mean, I think there's absolutely. I know I've done a couple of seminars with people talking about setting up housing companies and things like that, and some of them it's quite sort of worrying. You think you don't really know why you're doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure you've got to have a problem that's a reason to solve. And make sure that having a development company or a housing company, whatever, is actually going to solve that problem. So there's probably a little point having your own local authority development company in an area of very high value where there's limited housing supply or land to work on. Ditto, it's probably going to be difficult in areas of very low demand, to be honest, because where market rent and affordable rent in the public sector and surplus, and there's either surplus affordable accommodation or at least it's packed close to market rent, then probably limited point doing it. You've got to also, and this is the great thing about Barking Dagenham, actually they've really backed it in terms of putting the money where it is. They're borrowing a significant amount of money for this build programme, and you've got to be committed to do that, prepared to take the risk. And again, other London boroughs probably, a lot of them haven't actually, had that financial bravery to say, look, we're going to borrow the money, we're going to do this, and we're going to back it. Also, I think you've got to be prepared. If you're going to set up an arm's length structure, you've got to give it the freedom to be slightly arm's length. We're lucky, you've got independent board, very good quality board, but the council doesn't actually have a place on that board. The council controls us as the shareholder through its shareholder function, which is absolutely right. In other places, again, so arm's length companies set up, as a council committee to run it. So you're not getting the benefit of that independence, and because you might as well just keep it in a house if you're going to do that. So I think you've got to be clear, what's the problem, which for us very much is the market's failed. You need to intervene. The public sector's got to intervene because the market can't solve the problem. If the market can solve the problem, let the market solve the problem. There's no need to do anything else, or to work through the planning system to nudge and shape it. We've got a much more fundamental supply failure effectively on the housing side and in other areas. And be, then accept you're going to have to put a lot of money into this, and you're going to have to take quite a lot of risk. Managing that risk and doing it in a constructive way. I think some people haven't managed that risk particularly well or controlled that risk, which is the big worry. Don't just do it thinking you're going to make money. You're not going to make huge amounts of money out of this. We've made £10 million over our first 3 years of existence back to the council surplus. We're supposed to deliver £10 million surplus every year, but it's not huge in terms of our turnover, and it's not
gradual. It's increasing. You're improving, aren't you?
You build it. We go up and down, to be honest, because it's cyclical to a degree. But people think, set up a housing company, you make a load of money. You don't. No, that's not why you should do it. And I also think that local authorities, just investing speculatively in shopping centres or other assets. There's no point doing that. We would only invest in things where there's a real regeneration benefit for doing it, and probably within our own borough or in very close proximity. So I think there are lots of things to think about. But I think it's about political will, and you've got to be prepared to, take the chance, be clear on governance, and you've got to have the opportunity and the reason to do it, and don't just do it because everyone else has done it. Because
the trend,
our model works for Barking Dagenham, it won't work anywhere else, because Barking Dagenham is a different place from anywhere else. In many ways, in London, it's quite a unique place.
It does seem there when also on my travels and speaking to people, some people have gone for it, but as you said, they're following the trends, and for me, it just seems like a massive waste of time financially. And also just and just workforce power, isn't it? You know what I mean? You can get in there, and then I think when they get to what they're looking to establish, they, as you alluded to, don't make those calculated risks where you're not going to get everything done here. If you don't make those risks, obviously, okay, you'll stay where you are, but you won't make any mistakes. But you need to progress and move forward, don't you?
Yeah, and the other thing is there's quite a lot, in terms of setting up a new organisation. There is a lot of time and effort that goes into setting up an arm's length organisation. It's because the legal process. You might never look at them again, but you have to go through all this stuff in terms of producing contracts and documentation. And we, setting ourselves up as a separate company and all these sort of things. So there's a lot of investment that goes into doing it. So you've got to be clear that you've got, there's really strong reason to do it before you go down that road.
Mm. Okay. No, that's brilliant. Obviously, if you've, as you said, you've gone to sector from a different background, etc. If you weren't doing your role at the moment, what would you be? What would be your dream job outside of Barking Dagenham?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know. It's something similar probably, because one's got to match your skills and abilities against it. So when you get to my age, you can't learn any new tricks. So I've got a limited probably employability, and I've worked in London all my life, so I'm not much good outside London probably. It's what I seem to be relatively good at, or vaguely good at. So it's probably something in that area. Otherwise, I go, but I was a local councillor at one time. I go back into being a local councillor probably. Probably what I'd.
Well, that's the saying. If you're good at it, why? If it's not broken, why change? As the cliche saying is. But Pat, no, that's brilliant. Yeah, a lot of good content there. You covered a lot of information. So yeah, thanks again for your time.
No problem at all, Alex.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure obviously we'll catch you in the near future. And obviously we're looking forward to you hosting the next meet at the end of the month.
Oh yeah, okay, that'd be great. Well, I'll see you then. Alex, and nice to speak to you, and see you later.
So brilliant.
Power stays on. But,
well, I'll cut the recording there. That's brilliant, Pat. And again, thanks again.
Okay.
Is there any way I can thank? Are you a rugby fan by any chance, Pat?
No, I'm not at all. Actually, no.
Okay.
I'm a cycling fan, really. But,
okay. Yeah. To be fair, I just wanted obviously a way to say thank you. Is it like a nice bottle of wine I can send across to you?
It's all right, Alex. Honestly, just it's absolutely fine. Just just enjoy doing it, to be honest. So that's fine.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I'm at the moment looking forward to the one at the end of the month. That'll be a bit more. To be fair, if I'm being honest, this is my first one doing it, and it was apart from the internet up my control, I thought it went quite well. So no, I really enjoyed that. Looking forward to the month. I think I've got about 12 people at the moment. Yeah, so hopefully we should get at least 15. As you know, people say yes, drop out last minute.
Yeah, if you add a few extra people in, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, well, lovely to speak to you, Alex. And all works. If you need to redo any of it, obviously we'll have to just reconvene. But hopefully
it should be fine. We'll watch it together. I'll send you a copy as well, so you can have a look.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Nice to see you. Cheers. See you later. Bye.